For 12 years, a young woman named Lacy Fletcher suffered in plain sight, her body wasting away on a rotting couch, while her parents lived a normal life just feet away. When police finally discovered her in January 2022, she weighed just 96 pounds, covered in her own waste and infested with insect larvae. How could this happen in a middle-class home with working parents and concerned neighbors? The truth behind Lacy's tragic story would uncover a web of neglect, possible mental illness, and a failure of society's safety nets. This is the disturbing case of the Fletcher family. The Fletcher family lived on Slater Street in East Feliciana Parish, Louisiana. To their neighbors and community, they appeared to be a typical middle-class family. Clay worked as a police officer, while Sheila served on the town's board of aldermen. They were respected members of the community, holding respectable jobs and participating in local activities. Lacy Ellen Fletcher was born on October 20th, 1984. As a young girl, she was active and social, participating in school activities and playing with neighborhood friends. She attended school regularly and was often seen outside, enjoying typical childhood pursuits. However, things began to change as Lacy entered her teenage years. At the age of 14, Lacy suddenly withdrew from school. This abrupt change raised some initial questions among those who knew the family, but the Fletchers provided plausible explanations. They claimed Lacy was being homeschooled due to severe social anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder. The community, trusting the well-regarded family, accepted these explanations without much scrutiny. Despite Lacy's absence from public life, the Fletchers maintained their regular routines and community involvement. They attended social gatherings, participated in community events, and maintained a facade of normalcy that effectively concealed any troubles within their household. As the years passed, neighbors and community members noticed Lacy's continued absence, but didn't press the issue. The family's explanations about Lacy's condition seemed to satisfy most people's curiosity. However, questions lingered about what might have changed within the Fletcher household to keep Lacy so isolated. The true extent of Lacy's isolation only became clear much later. It was revealed that she hadn't been seen by neighbors for over a decade. The young girl who once played outside had vanished from public view entirely, with no one in the community raising significant alarm. This long period of invisibility set the stage for a shocking discovery that would shatter the carefully constructed image of the Fletcher family. The truth behind Lacy's disappearance from public life would soon come to light, revealing a horrifying reality that had been hidden behind closed doors for years. The Fletcher household's facade of normalcy was shattered in the early hours of a winter morning. A chilling emergency call led police to confront a reality so horrific it would haunt them for years to come. The discovery inside the Fletcher home challenged everything they thought they knew about human nature and the capacity for cruelty. On a cold January night in 2022, Sheila Fletcher made a frantic call to the local police station. Her voice trembling, she reported that her daughter Lacy had stopped breathing. Law enforcement and medical personnel rushed to the Fletcher residence, unaware of the nightmarish scene that awaited them. As the first responders approached the house, an overwhelming stench of decay and feces assaulted their senses. The odor was so potent and unbearable that it stopped them in their tracks. Steeling themselves, the police and medical team entered the living room. What they saw defied comprehension. Lacy Fletcher, now 36 years old, lay motionless on a couch, her body a testament to years of unimaginable neglect. She was severely emaciated, weighing only 96 pounds. Her hair was a tangled, matted mess, and her body was covered in feces. Most disturbingly, waste material was found in her eyes and mouth. As the investigators documented the scene, the full extent of Lacy's suffering became apparent. Her body was riddled with bed sores, some so deep they reached her bones. These wounds indicated that Lacy had been immobile for an extended period. Adding to the horror, insect larvae were found infesting various parts of her body. The coroner's examination revealed even more shocking details. During the autopsy, remnants of foam from the couch upholstery were discovered in Lacy's stomach, suggesting that in her desperation, she had resorted to eating the very furniture she was confined to. The cause of death was determined to be multifactorial, resulting from a combination of neglected bed sores, bone inflammation, and blood infection, all exacerbated by extreme neglect. The impact of this discovery on the first responders was profound. Hardened professionals found themselves struggling to process what they had witnessed. Many expressed difficulty in coming to terms with the level of suffering they had encountered. As news of Lacy's condition spread, a question echoed through the community. How could this have happened unnoticed for so long? The search for answers would uncover a disturbing tale of isolation, possible mental illness, and societal failure, leaving a community grappling with its own role in this tragedy. The search for answers led investigators down a haunting path of gradual withdrawal and isolation. As they dug deeper into Lacy's past, they uncovered a paradox that defied explanation. How could a young woman vanish from society while living under the same roof as her parents? Lacy's last confirmed public sighting was over a decade before her tragic death. After being withdrawn from school at age 14, her social interactions rapidly dwindled. What began as occasional absences from community events soon turned into complete invisibility. Neighbors who once saw Lacy playing outside or walking to school now only caught glimpses of her parents, Clay and Sheila, going about their daily routines. As Lacy retreated further into isolation, her living conditions deteriorated at an alarming rate. The once tidy family home became a prison of neglect. Lacy's world shrank to the confines of a single couch, where she would remain for over 12 years. Medical experts noted that such prolonged immobility would have devastating effects on her physical and mental health. The years of confinement took a severe toll on Lacy's body. Pressure sores developed, some so severe they reached the bone. These painful wounds, left untreated, became infected, contributing to her declining health. The lack of movement and proper nutrition caused her muscles to waste away, leaving her emaciated and weak. Perhaps most disturbingly, Lacy's mother later claimed that her daughter had become increasingly distant and refused to leave the house. This statement raised troubling questions about the nature of Lacy's confinement and the role her parents played in her isolation. Experts suggest that victims of severe neglect can become trapped in their situations due to a combination of psychological factors and the enabling behavior of caregivers. As investigators pieced together the timeline of Lacy's disappearance from public life, they were left grappling with a chilling realization. For over a decade, a young woman had suffered in silence, her existence hidden from the world by the very people meant to protect her. The question that haunted everyone involved was simple yet profound. How had no one intervened during all those years of silent suffering? The revelation that Lacy had been confined to a couch for over 12 years shocked the community and investigators alike. It was a grim testament to the insidious nature of hidden abuse and neglect, raising uncomfortable questions about societal responsibility and the limits of privacy. As the investigation continued, attention turned to the role of Lacy's parents in this unfolding tragedy, and the community was left to reckon with its own part in failing to recognize and prevent such extreme isolation and suffering. Clay and Sheila Fletcher maintained a facade of normalcy while their daughter Lacy suffered in horrific conditions. Clay continued his work as a police officer, interacting with colleagues and the public daily. Sheila remained active in local politics, attending town meetings and social events. Their ability to compartmentalize Lacy's suffering while engaging in everyday activities baffled investigators and community members. As the investigation progressed, the Fletchers' story changed. Initially, they claimed Lacy was fine. When evidence of neglect became overwhelming, they suggested Lacy had refused help and chosen isolation. Investigators discovered the family would gather to watch television mere feet from where Lacy lay in squalor, highlighting the psychological complexity of the case. Experts pointed to willful blindness to explain how the Fletchers might rationalize their actions. This psychological defense mechanism allowed them to ignore information that would challenge their self-image as good parents and upstanding community members. The Fletchers' behavior suggested a profound disconnect between their public persona and private actions. The most disturbing aspect emerged when the Fletchers addressed Lacy's condition directly. They claimed Lacy was of sound mind until the end and had made her own choices regarding her care. This attempt to deflect responsibility onto the victim shocked investigators and the community. As the full picture of the Fletchers' double life came into focus, attention turned to the broader community. How had this tragedy unfolded without intervention? The case raised uncomfortable questions about societal responsibility and the limits of privacy, forcing neighbors and acquaintances to confront their own role in failing to recognize and prevent such extreme neglect. In the tight-knit community where Lacy Fletcher lived, her disappearance from public view went unnoticed for years. The last time anyone saw her would become a haunting memory, leaving neighbors to question how they missed the signs of her deteriorating situation. The Fletchers maintained several points of contact with the community that could have revealed Lacy's plight. They regularly attended church services, and Lacy had previously been involved in a Baptist academy. These interactions provided opportunities for others to notice changes in Lacy's behavior or inquire about her well-being. However, the family's respected status and seemingly normal routines effectively masked the tragic reality unfolding behind closed doors. Robert, a longtime neighbor of the Fletchers, recalled last seeing Lacy about 15 years before her death. He noted that even then, she seemed different from her peers, preferring solitary activities over social engagement. This early sign of Lacy's withdrawal went largely unnoticed, dismissed as mere shyness or social anxiety. As time passed, opportunities for intervention slipped by. In 2017, Robert, concerned about Lacy's prolonged absence, asked Clay Fletcher about his daughter's well-being. Clay quickly dismissed the inquiry, stating that Lacy was fine before changing the subject. This brief interaction could have been a crucial moment for intervention had Robert pressed further or reported his concerns to authorities. The community's shock upon learning of Lacy's condition at the time of her death was overwhelming. Neighbors and acquaintances struggled to reconcile their perception of the Fletcher family with the horrific neglect that had occurred. Many expressed guilt and regret for not recognizing the signs or taking action sooner. The bystander effect played a significant role in the community's inaction. This psychological phenomenon often leads individuals to assume that someone else will take action in situations of suspected abuse or neglect. Statistics reveal a troubling trend. Many neighbors or community members hesitate to report suspicions of abuse, often due to uncertainty or fear of overstepping boundaries. The turning point came far too late when a neighbor reportedly saw Lacy lying motionless through a window. This belated recognition of the severity of the situation finally prompted the call to emergency services. However, by then, the damage had been done, and Lacy's fate was sealed. As the community grappled with its failure to protect one of its own, attention turned to the legal system. The question now loomed: how would justice be served for Lacy Fletcher? And what consequences would her parents face for their years of neglect? Clay and Sheila Fletcher were initially charged with involuntary manslaughter for the death of their daughter, Lacy. As the shocking details of the case emerged, prosecutors faced a unique challenge in addressing years of extreme neglect. The evidence was overwhelming, but the defense argued that Lacy, as an adult, had made her own choices to remain isolated. The trial exposed the horrific reality of Lacy's final years. Photographs presented as evidence were so disturbing that several jurors required medical assistance after viewing them. These images starkly illustrated the extreme conditions Lacy had endured, challenging the defense's claims of autonomy. Legal experts noted that while adults have the right to make their own decisions, guardians still bear responsibility for the well-being of those under their care. The prosecution emphasized this point, arguing that the Fletchers had failed in their most basic duties as parents. The district attorney's office stated, "We will ensure justice for, and the public will know, that guardians will be held accountable for negligence or cruel treatment of a person under their care." This declaration set the tone for the legal proceedings. Despite the gravity of the accusations, Clay and Sheila Fletcher were initially released on a $300,000 bond. This decision raised questions in the community, given the severity of the neglect and the financial resources it suggested the couple possessed. On June 19th, a grand jury indicted the Fletchers on charges of second-degree murder, upgrading from involuntary manslaughter. This reflected the prosecution's belief that the Fletchers' actions warranted the most serious consequences under the law. The upgraded charges carried the potential for decades in prison if convicted. The case raised broader questions about societal responsibility, the limits of personal autonomy, and the role of caregivers in preventing such tragedies. The community, still reeling from the shocking revelations, looked to the legal system for answers and justice for Lacy Fletcher. As the Fletcher trial concluded, the community was forced to confront a harsh reality. How many others like Lacy were suffering in silence? This question spurred immediate action within the small town. Local authorities quickly implemented training programs to help residents recognize signs of neglect and abuse. These sessions emphasized the critical role neighbors play in safeguarding vulnerable individuals. The town also established a neighborhood watch program specifically focused on identifying potential cases of abuse or neglect. Schools enhanced their monitoring systems for students who suddenly withdraw, aiming to prevent future cases of isolation like Lacy's. Experts in abuse prevention stress the importance of community vigilance. They advised residents to pay attention to subtle signs, such as a neighbor's prolonged absence or unexplained changes in behavior. The message was clear: report concerns, even if unsure. As one expert stated, it's better to report and be wrong than to stay silent and allow suffering to continue. Studies revealed that as many as 60% of abuse cases go unreported, underscoring the critical need for community intervention. This statistic served as a powerful motivator for residents to remain alert and take action when suspecting something amiss. The memory of Lacy Fletcher, a young woman who withered away just feet from her neighbors, became a symbol of the consequences of inaction. Her case challenged the community to re-examine their notions of privacy and neighborly responsibility, pushing them towards a future where vigilance and compassion go hand in hand. Behind closed doors, suffering can occur in even the most seemingly normal households, making community awareness and action crucial in preventing future tragedies. The tragic case of Lacy Fletcher reveals the hidden nature of abuse and neglect that can occur behind closed doors, even in seemingly normal households. As a community, we must remain vigilant and take action when we suspect something is amiss. Lacy's story represents countless others who may be suffering in silence, challenging us to re-examine our notions of privacy and neighborly responsibility. The Fletcher case urges us to create a future where vigilance and compassion work together. A simple knock on the door or a concerned inquiry could save a life. We must act now to prevent more vulnerable individuals from experiencing the same fate as Lacy, ensuring that no one is left to suffer alone and forgotten.